Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Curator's Corner. I'm Jeff Seymour, historian and curator here at the National Civil War Naval Museum. Well, for this episode of Curator's Corner, I'd like to talk about one of those things that's a little secretive, yet has a lot of the excitement of secrecy, and that is blockade running. Probably one of the most visible symbols or characters identifiable with blockade running is the character of Rhett Butler from Gone with the Wind. And here's a guy who's got some flair, he's a little secretive, moves about rather easily and not. But a blockade running captain, what is he trying to do? Well, he's trying to evade the warships of the United States Navy that is blockading or blocking up or preventing ships like these runners from making it into the Confederacy. It is part of that Anaconda plan, the attempt to squeeze the South into submission. Well, here is the South's attempt, the Confederacy's attempt to break that blockade. And since the Confederacy, the American South, is not a strong industrial area, it relies on imports, specifically really talking about British and French imports, but of course other European powers. So what is a blockade runner? Well, it can be anything from a large, sleek vessel like this one, or even a canoe. So it depends on where you're going in, where you're trying to get out, how much material you're trying to carry, and so forth. So what is a blockade runner? That term is a little loose, but blockade runners at the upper end of what is nice. You're looking at a vessel like this, and typically these are British made, and a lot of times very specifically Scottish made blockade runners. So if you hear the term Scottish-made blockade runners, this is the kind of ship that you're looking at. And when we talk about technological advances during the Civil War, like ironclads and submarines and so forth, one of the advancements during the time period is ships like this. Now, this particular ship is the Ferry Bowers, and the Ferry Bowers has a very local connection to Columbus, Georgia, which is our big story. And it is owned by the Importing-Exporting Company of Georgia. And there are 7 financiers, owners of this company, and they engage in blockade running. One of those businessmen is a local businessman to Columbus, a cotton factor. He dabbles in some other businesses, but most of what he works at before the war, during the war, and so forth, is as a cotton merchant, or sometimes you'll hear the phrase cotton factor. Well, Lloyd Bowers is this gentleman, and he is part of this consortium of businessmen who operate this company. And they own several blockade runners, but they also own several other ships. And typically what you do is you purchase material in England or France and run it on a pretty large ship to places like Bermuda or the Bahamas or Havana in Cuba. And from there, it's transferred to ships like this, to blockade runners. Again, whatever size, shape, and so forth you've got. But it's transferred there to a blockade runner and then run into one of the southern ports. And of course, the Union's effort to close down these ports to these blockade runners is a major part of the strategy of the North and that Anaconda plan squeezing the South. Well, these Scottish-made, Clyde-built, along the River Clyde are these blockade runners. They're very sleek, and they're sometimes referred to as the Greyhound of the seas. And this serves as a dual name. There's a double entendre there. They're painted gray, and if you'll notice here, the top of the paddle wheel is painted white. And this is camouflage. It's gray hulls and above the waterline, typically a red below the waterline. This is to protect against seaworms and so forth in the wood. Well, the white cap on top here is resembling the white caps of the waves that move into shoreline. So if you're looking at this in low light conditions, it looks like the water moving along the shore. So it's camouflage. But another reason that they call it the Greyhound of the Seas is because these ships are fast. They move typically between 18 and 20 knots. And as a reminder to our landlocked friends, a knot is 1.15 mile an hour. So you're talking about, that doesn't seem like very fast, but consider the technology of the time, steam engines, that is remarkably fast. And you're talking about many ships that don't even hit 10 knots an hour at an average. So going 20 knots, these ships are moving fast. So they are very low to the water. They've got a very low profile. If you notice here on front of the bow, the head of the ship is a covered area. This is called the turtle shell. And that's so as the ship is moving through the water, the waves come over the ship and the bow cuts through, and so you've got very little, or you limit the amount of water coming over the front of the ship onto the deck so that the ship is not swamped and you lose it. Well, the Mary Bowers, she's 225 feet long, she's 25 feet at the beam, that's 25 feet across, and she probably has about a 10.5 foot draft. She is low draft because she's got to get into these southern ports. And so most of these blockade runners are designed like this. Fast, very low profile, but they have the capacity to carry 200 to 220 tons of material. So that's a lot of material to carry on these ships. And one of the big reasons why you don't see these fast ships going that entire distance across the Atlantic. Well, here's the Mary Bowers. And the Mary Bowers is actually named for Lloyd Bowers' sister, Mary. And during the war, Mary Bowers is actually married and living with her husband in Maine. So she stays pretty much out of the center of everything. But Lloyd Bowers has named the ship in honor of his sister. And she is delivered to the ship, not the sister. She is delivered to the Importing-Exporting Company of Georgia in middle 1864 and makes 2 successful trips into Charleston. Now by 1864, Charleston is pretty much sewn up by the Union Navy, and the Union Navy has made several attempts to try to crack the Charleston nut. So here's a blockade runner this late in the war that has made 2 successful trips in and out of Charleston. Now on her 3rd trip in, on August the 31st, 1864, she strikes another vessel, the Georgiana. Now the Georgiana had sunk several months earlier. This ship strikes the Georgiana and sinks herself. And these are some of the items recovered from the wreck of the Mary Bowers. And most of these are civilian items. The first items you see here are sewing supplies. We have pins. We also have clasps for coats and shawls and so forth. And there's also some sewing tape, some liner. Next to this is a set of false teeth that was found in the wreck. And with the Confederacy not being able to produce things, who thinks of false teeth? So if you've got to have those replaced, you've got to have those special ordered from Great Britain. So here's a few of those false teeth, one of the more unusual items in our collection. Next to the teeth, we have to think about the certain amount of space reserved for military supplies. And these are lead bullets. Now typically, the way that this is shipped into the Confederacy is by lead ingots, and then they are cast into bullets later. But here are some examples of some cast bullets on the wreck site of the ship. Next to the bullets, we've got a couple of personal items here. The item at the top there is a toothbrush, and you can see the holes there where the brushes fit inside the toothbrush. And next to that toothbrush are a couple of razor handles. Next to the personal items there, personal hygiene items, is the remains of a pencil. So in the middle there would be a lead, so that your typical, if you think about your number 2 pencil, this is their version of that. And it's, of course, the graphite in that is missing, and you basically got some slivers of wood. And then at the end of the exhibit case here is dinnerware. We've got a plate, we've got a couple of mugs, and then some teacups, and their saucers. So anything that you can bring into the Confederacy that is basically civilian, everyday usage items, they're going to do that. And this is an indicator of the lack of industrial capacity in the South. Even though there is some there, we're bringing in items for everyday use. And a blockade runner can bring to their owners, their captains and crews, a tremendous amount of profit. And even though blockade runners may be lost, like the Ferry Bowers, they can bring in a tremendous amount of money. So all of these civilian items are coming across in this ship, this sleek, fast Greyhound of the sea. And of course this one has that great Columbus connection with the Bowers family. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's a little taste of blockade running and a little taste of how it is connected to Columbus and what we do here at the National Civil War Naval Museum. Check us out at www.portcolumbus.org, and thank you all for visiting.